Benefits to all sections. Such are the origin, duration, extent, and sanctions of the policy which we are now called upon to subvert. Its beneficial effects, although they may vary in degree, have been felt in all parts of the Union. To none, I verily believe, has it been prejudicial. To the North, everywhere testimonies are borne to the high prosperity which it has diffused. There, all branches of industry are animated and flourishing. Commerce, foreign and domestic, active, cities and towns springing up, enlarging and beautifying, navigation fully and profitably employed, and the whole face of the country smiling with improvement, cheerfulness, and abundance. The gentleman from South Carolina has supposed that we in the West derive no advantages from this system. He is mistaken. Let him visit us, and he will find from the head of La Belle Riviere at Pittsburgh to America at its mouth the most rapid and gratifying advances. He will behold Pittsburgh itself, Wheeling, Portsmouth, Maysville, Cincinnati, Louisville, and numerous other towns lining and ornamenting the banks of that noble river, daily extending their limits, and prosecuting, with the greatest spirit and profit, numerous branches of the manufacturing and mechanic arts. If he will go into the interior in the state of Ohio, he will there perceive the most astonishing progress in agriculture, in the useful arts, and in all the improvements to which they both directly conduce. Then let him cross over into my own, my favorite state, and contemplate the spectacle which is there exhibited. He will perceive numerous villages, not large but neat, thriving, and some of them highly ornamented, many manufactories of hemp, cotton, wool, and other articles. In various parts of the country, and especially in the Elkhorn region, an endless succession of natural parks, the forests thinned, fallen trees and undergrowth cleared away, large herds and flocks feeding on luxuriant grasses, and interspersed with comfortable, sometimes elegant mansions, surrounded by extensive lawns. The honorable gentleman from South Carolina says that a profitable trade was carried on from the west through the Saluda Gap in mules, horses, and other livestock, which has been checked by the operation of the tariff. It is true that such a trade was carried on between Kentucky and South Carolina, mutually beneficial to both parties, but several years ago resolutions at popular meetings in Carolina were adopted not to purchase the produce of Kentucky by way of punishment for her attachment to the tariff. They must have supposed us as stupid as the sires of one of the descriptions of the stock of which that trade consisted, if they imagined that their resolutions would affect our principles. Our drovers cracked their whips, blew their horns, and passed the Saluda Gap to other markets where better humors existed, and equal or greater profits were made. I have heard of your successor in the House of Representatives, Mr. President, this anecdote, that he joined in the adoption of those resolutions, but when, about Christmas, he applied to one of his South Carolina neighbors to purchase the regular supply of pork for the ensuing year, he found that he had to give two prices for it, and he declared if that were the patriotism on which the resolutions were based, he would not conform to them, and in point of fact laid in his annual stock of pork by purchase from the first passing Kentucky drover. That trade, now partially resumed, was maintained by the sale of Western productions on the one side and Carolina money on the other. From that condition of it, the gentleman from South Carolina might have drawn this conclusion that an advantageous trade may exist, although one of the parties to it pays in specie for the productions which he purchases from the other, and consequently that it does not follow, if we did not purchase British fabrics, that it might not be the interest of England to purchase our raw material of cotton. The Kentucky drover received the South Carolina specie, or taking bills, or the evidences of deposit in the banks, carry these home, and disposing of them to the merchant, he brought out goods of foreign or domestic manufacture in return. Such is the circuitous nature of trade and remittance, which no nation understands better than Great Britain. Nor has the system, which has been the parent source of so much benefit to other parts of the Union, proved injurious to the cotton-growing country. I cannot speak of South Carolina itself, where I have never been, with so much certainty, but of other portions of the Union in which cotton is grown, especially those bordering on the Mississippi, I can confidently speak. If cotton planting is less profitable than it was, that is the result of increased production. But I believe it to be still the most profitable investment of capital of any branch of business in the United States. And if a committee were raised with power to send for persons in papers, I take upon myself to say that such would be the result of the inquiry, In Kentucky, I know many individuals who have their cotton plantations below and retain their residence in that state where they remain during the sickly season, and they are all, I believe, without exception, doing well. Others, tempted by their success, are constantly engaging in the business, whilst scarcely any comes from the cotton region to engage in Western agriculture. A friend, now in my eye a member of this body, upon a capital of less than $70,000, invested in a plantation and slaves, made the year before last $16,000. A member of the other house, I understand, who, without removing himself, sent some of his slaves to Mississippi, made last year about 20%. Two friends of mine in the latter state, whose annual income is from $30,000 to $60,000, being desirous to curtail their business, have offered estates for sale, which they are willing to show by regular vouchers of receipt and disbursement, yield 18% per annum. One of my most opulent acquaintances in a county adjoining to that in which I reside, having married in Georgia, has derived a large portion of his wealth from a cotton estate there situated. The loss of the tonnage of Charleston, which has been dwelt on, does not proceed from the tariff. It never had a very large amount, and it has not been able to retain what it had in consequence of the operation of the principle of free trade on its navigation. Its tonnage has gone to the more enterprising and adventurous tars of the northern states, with whom those of the city of Charleston could not maintain a successful competition in the freedom of the coasting trade existing between the different parts of the Union. That this must be the true cause is demonstrated by the fact that, however it may be with the port of Charleston, our coasting tonnage generally is constantly increasing. As to the foreign tonnage, about one half of that which is engaged in the direct trade between Charleston and Great Britain is English, proving that the tonnage of South Carolina cannot maintain itself in a competition under the free and equal navigation secured by our treaty with that power.